For the Sake of My Children, a novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel narrates the life story of an Australian girl who fell in love with a Saudi man. Then she converted to Islam, married her Arab lover, and traveled with him to the Islamic world. This book is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on a true love affair between a former Christian girl and a Muslim immigrant. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Therefore, any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 26. Dispute over the custody of the children of the detained Muslim woman. Despite this, Muslims in Toronto have different attitudes and interests than other Canadians. Their main concern and worry are the future of Irshad's 6 Muslim children. What will the Canadian government do with them? Will they be deported from the country, and if yes, where will they be sent, and if not sent, to whom will they be given guardianship? A rumor spread among Muslims in Toronto that the children had already been distributed among white families who were all Christian infidels. As a result, members of the Muslim community organized peaceful demonstrations in which thousands of Muslim men and women participated. The demonstrators carried paper banners and wooden boards demanding that the Muslim children of the detained Australian woman, Irshad Al-Shamari, be handed over to Muslim families to be raised as Muslims. After touring the city for many hours, the protesters went to the mayor of Toronto and presented a letter signed by thousands of Muslims. In their letter, they asked the mayor to grant custody of Irshad's children to Muslim families. The truth of the matter is that the 6 children of the white Muslim terrorist suspect Irshad Al-Shamari were placed in the care of some social workers the same day she was arrested by the RCMP. All these social workers are either Christians, atheists, or agnostics. The mayor appeared on television the same day and said that he understood the concern of the Muslim community, but that children's custody should be decided by the Department of Social Work and not by any other government body. The mayor's decision angered the Muslim community. The 9 children of the arrested Australian Muslim woman under investigation, Irshad Al-Shamari, according to their names and ages, are Aisha 13 years old, Abu Bakr 12 years old, Khadija 11 years old, Omar 10 years old, Salama 9 years old, Othman 7 years old, Zainab 5 years old, and the twins Hassan and Hussein are both of the same age, 2 years. The firstborn, Aisha, daughter of Irshad and Mustafa, is married to an old Afghani mullah and has stayed in Kandahar city with her Muslim husband. Aisha was a minor child at the age of 10, and her Muslim husband is an old man who has reached the age of 72 years. Some armed Muslim terrorists have kidnapped the sons of Irshad, Abu Bakr, and Omar at the Pak-India border. Susan's eldest son is a 15-year-old born to a Chinese Buddhist friend. However, she has not contacted her first son and does not even know what his name is. When rumors were confirmed that the Department of Social Work entrusted the care of the Muslim children of the Muslim woman, Irshad, imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay to non-Muslim families, the Islamic Religious Council in Toronto raised the matter to the criminal court. In the meantime, the suspected Muslim terrorist Irshad Al-Shamari concluded her life ended when she reached the notorious Gitmo prison of terrorists. She expected to be sentenced to life in prison for her many years of association with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and had a notorious terrorist Saudi Muslim husband. She understood that no one would believe her if she said that she had nothing to do with what her Arab husband and other mujahideen had done. Moreover, she will not be able to convince the CIA that she was kept in those Islamic camps against her will. Living for more than 5 years in Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps, without knowing what the mujahideen were trained for, is an unbelievable story. The Australian woman, Irshad, knew very well that the Mujahideen had been trained and prepared to carry out suicide missions against the so-called enemies of Islam, especially the Americans. She even heard the fatwa issued by Osama bin Laden that allowed Mujahideen and Muslims around the world to kill Americans wherever they could be found. Her late husband repeatedly read to her verses from the Holy Quran and hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad that incite Muslims and encourage them to wage jihad against the so-called impure infidels, Christians, and Jews, who are named by Islam brothers of monkeys and pigs, worshippers of the Al-Tagut, which means Satan. Her husband and everyone who lived in those terrorist training camps believed in his or her heart that killing those who rejected Islam was a religious duty for every Muslim man and Muslima woman. After facing all these undeniable accusations, she, the suspected Muslim, Irshad al-Shamari, decided to plead guilty. Rather, she is determined in her heart to cooperate with her interrogators and tell them everything she knows about these training camps. She wants to rid her conscience of guilt for betraying her Western people. She knows that she lived among people who were trained to kill her people and every non-Muslim infidel, whether Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, or irreligious. She also knows that she gave birth to sons who were supposed to be trained to kill innocents and her daughters who would be forced to marry Muslim mujahideen and give birth to more terrorists. Detainee Irshad wished to be given the right to decide the future of her 6 children. Before her arrest, she had planned to convert her Muslim children to Christianity and raise them as Christians. Unfortunately, she was arrested before her conversion to Christianity was officially announced by her. Therefore, she expected that the Canadian government would grant custody of her 6 children to Muslim families in Toronto City and raise them as Muslims. Irshad wept day and night for her innocent children when she thought that they would grow up in the religion of their cowardly, terrorist, criminal father. She misses them so much and longs for their kisses and hugs. Her children are the hope that made her bear all the abuses of her evil husband and the Islamic societies in which she lived for 10 long and lean years. If not for the future of her children, Irshad would have killed herself a long time ago. Many times, she became suicidal while living in those abusive environments and wanted to kill herself, but the future of her innocent children always prevented her from doing so. However, she knew and understood that after being caught and exposed as the wife of one of the 19 terrorists who carried out the cowardly terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, in America, no one would love her anymore. She expected that her 6 children would distance themselves from her and that her Christian parents and brother John in Australia would deny or disavow their relationship with her. Even the Muslim community she knows in Toronto and New Delhi may openly denounce her as a dangerous Muslim terrorist and the wife of a cowardly Muslim terrorist for the false claim that Islam is a religion of peace and that terrorism has no religion. Irshad concluded that her life was a failure and a disaster from the moment she arrived in Saudi Arabia. She also understood that her Muslim husband's love for her was not real. She was deceived by his false personality. She never saw that hidden terrorist nature that he covered up with that false Islamic religious piety. At that time, she saw him as a living saint and a pure angel and worshipped him as the God of her love. Once they traveled to Saudi Arabia, her husband turned into a tyrannical, controlling, and antichrist messiah, and his divine nature changed to a demonic one. Memories of those days in Sydney make Irshad reflect on her hasty decision and irresponsible behavior toward her loving Christian family. For the sake of her love, she did not hesitate to sever all ties with her noble family. She even sold Christ to follow Muhammad and threw away her religious book, the Holy Bible, and took the damned Quran of her Arab husband. She has abandoned all values held by her family and people. What did she get as a reward for sacrificing her family, idealistic Western society, religion, and herself? Instead of entering heaven, Irshad landed in hell. Instead of living among angels, she lived among demons and during the worst and most evil society she had ever known. Instead of fulfilling her life's dream of studying foreign culture and language and becoming an Australian diplomat in a third-world foreign society, she lands in the worst detention center in the world, Guantanamo Bay, and is imprisoned with the evilest people on the surface of planet Earth. Meanwhile, the future of Irshad's 6 Muslim children created a heated debate between the Muslim community in Toronto and the Ontario state government. The unsurmountable problem began when the mayor of Toronto put the matter in the hands of social workers who had already entrusted the care of the 6 children to non-Muslim families. The Muslim Religious Council filed a complaint with a criminal court in Toronto accusing the Department of Social Work of attempting to convert minor Muslim children to Christianity against the wishes of their Muslim mother, who is under investigation. Before the court could investigate the complaint and issue its final ruling, the issue of the 6 children became a hot topic of debate in Canada and other parts of the world. The case became more complicated when the uncle of the children's father in Saudi Arabia claimed custody of them. This is the same uncle of Mustafa who was an advisor to her late husband when she was living in the city of Dammam. Shortly thereafter, Mustafa's mother Zainab bint Mahmood and his Muslim brothers and sisters in Australia demanded that the children be handed over to them. Muslim communities around the world supported the demands of Mustafa's uncle in Saudi Arabia and his family in Australia. On the other hand, staff from the Canadian Social Work Office in Toronto argued that the future of the arrested mother's 6 Muslim children should be decided by their office. They based their argument on the Western belief that a boy or a girl is not property in the hands of his or her family, but that he or she is the son or daughter of society. Furthermore, social workers have argued that since many children were taken away from their abusive parents and given to other families for adoption, then why should these children be treated differently? Despite this, Muslim community leaders in Toronto rejected the decision of the Department of Social Work on the grounds that Islam forbids adoption, and since the children are Muslim, they should not be adopted by any other family except their Muslim relatives in Saudi Arabia or Australia. When the debate between the Muslim community and social work reached a dead end, it was left to the criminal court to decide. To appease the Muslim community in Toronto and avoid being accused of violating the decision of the Department of Social Work, the felony court ruled that custody of the children of the detained Australian Muslim woman, Irshad Al-Shamari, should be decided by the mother herself. The leaders of the Islamic Religious Council in the city of Toronto and the Muslim immigrant communities in other Canadian cities have become incredibly happy with the decision of the Canadian Secular Criminal Court and consider it fair and equitable against innocent Muslim children. Accordingly, the Government of Canada asked the U.S. government to allow the legal representatives of the Toronto Criminal Court to obtain the decision of the white Muslim mother suspected of being a female terrorist in the matter of custody of her 6 Muslim children. The CIA agreed to the request of the Government of Canada. Chapter 27. The Mental and Spiritual Emancipation of the Suspected Muslim Woman. Before the Canadian legal representatives of the Toronto Criminal Court arrived at the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, a small incident occurred in Irshad's cell. One day, 3 guards approached her cell and brought her some religious items necessary for her daily rituals. These guards are 2 men and 1 woman. The female guard is a large woman, and her body is about the same size and weight as those of the other 2 male guards. She looked angry and her face was serious. Without looking at the Muslim detainee, Irshad Al-Shamari, the female guard took out a box that she was carrying and put some things in her hands and began to place them where she thought it was the right place for her. This is your religious book that you call the Holy Quran. This is your prayer rug, and if you like using your prayer beads, I have one for you here. Some of your Muslim brothers here do not like to use the rosary as they perform their daily prayers while glorifying their God, Allah. They said that their Prophet Muhammad forbade the use of the rosary and encouraged them to use their fingers instead. The female Muslim detainee Irshad saw the huge American female guard put these religious things without asking her whether she needed them or not. When she finished doing what she thought it was her duty to do, Irshad said to her in a soft and affectionate voice, as if begging her, "Can I get a copy of the Holy Bible or one of the 4 Gospels of Jesus Christ?" The three guards suddenly stopped, turned around, and faced Irshad with big question marks on their faces. The female guard overcame the shock first, and then confronted Irshad with her hands on her waist. "Tell me now. What do you want to do with our holy Bible? Do you want to use its papers to wipe your dirty ass when you use the toilet?" "God forbid, ma'am. I will never do such an abomination to God's holy book. I just want a copy of the Holy Bible to read it and learn a lot from it." "Why don't you read your Holy Quran?" "I know the whole Quran and memorized it by heart." The female guard looked askance at the suspect female terrorist for a while, then turned and walked out of the cell, followed by the other two male guards. Irshad was very frustrated when she understood that her request for a copy of the Holy Bible had been mocked and rejected, accusing her of using its papers to clean herself after using the toilet. In her cell, she has a small toilet which she is supposed to use when she needs to go to the washroom and drink water from its faucet when she is thirsty. Imprisoned Irshad guessed why the detained guard thought she would use the pages of the Holy Bible of Jews and Christians as toilet paper to clean her ass and pussy after her urine and feces. She has heard that there are rumors in the Muslim world that American soldiers at Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq and guards at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center use Quran sheets instead of toilet paper to insult and anger the religious symbols of Muslim prisoners. However, 2 days later, a male guard came to Irshad's cell and handed her a new copy of the Gideon Bible. She received the Bible with a smile on her face and thanked the guard who gifted it to her and told her he did it in secret and requested her not to tell anyone. Being the only female Muslim terrorist in the prison, the suspect Muslim woman Irshad al-Shamari is not allowed to mingle with other prisoners during her free time in order to preserve her safety and fear that she will be raped by companion-starved males who have not had sex with women for a long time. She spends all her free time in her cell reading the Holy Bible. She could not believe that the religious book she is reading now is the same Holy Bible she read when she was still a Christian girl in Australia. She remembered teaching the young children in Sunday school at her church. Although those religious lessons and stories that she used to impart to her students never touched her heart as she feels now while reading them after so many years. Jesus' words in the New Testament Gospels did not make sense to her until she read them now in her solitary confinement. She read the Sermon on the Mount repeatedly until she had a lot of it stored in her heart. She loved the commandment of the Lord Jesus, in which he told his disciples, "Love your enemies." She lived for many years with people whose prophet said that God commanded him to kill his enemies and fight those who rejected his religious message, but the Lord Jesus commanded his followers to love their enemies and pray for them. Christ did not impose his divine message on people and did not order his followers to kill those who refused to believe in him. Many of his early Christian followers were cruelly murdered because they refused to deny him. Muhammad not only ordered the killing of the infidels, but also ordered his followers to kill those who abandoned his religion. Christ did not order the killing of those who apostatized from his religion. After reading the words of Jesus Christ and understanding his glorious and peaceful message, imprisoned Irshad wished in her heart that her children would follow Christ instead of Muhammad. She prayed to the Lord Jesus to grant her wish. "O Lord, I know that I am not worthy even to speak your most holy and precious name with my unclean and filthy lips. I have turned my back on you and followed a religion that taught its followers nothing but hatred and killing of infidels, misogyny, abuse, and violence towards women. Today, I come before you on bent knees and with a penitent heart, and I make one request. I want you to entrust the care of my 6 children into the hands of those who follow you from their hearts to bring them up as Christians. Amen." And it so happened that on the same day that Irshad performed that prayer from her heart, the Canadian legal representatives of the Toronto Criminal Court approached her cell and informed her of the Canadian court judge's ruling regarding the dispute over the custody of her Muslim children. When she heard the good news, Irshad not only felt that Jesus had answered her prayers, but understood that he had descended from his glorious throne and sent his angels in human forms to confirm the answer to her sincere prayer. The decision of Irshad to raise her 6 Muslim children in committed Canadian Christian families was not believed and not expected by anyone. Even the employees of the social work department were shocked by her decision. But every one of them became incredibly happy when he got over the shock. Despite this, all Muslims in Canada refused to believe that the detained white Muslim woman, Irshad Al-Shamari, made such a decision without coercion. The Toronto Muslim community collectively believed that the legal representatives had lied in their statement or that the U.S. detention authority at Guantanamo Bay had forged a false statement and falsely attributed it to the white Muslim accused, Irshad. Accordingly, the Islamic Religious Council in Toronto suggested sending some Muslim leaders to the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center and meeting the detained Muslim mother, Irshad Al-Shamari, and obtaining her decision directly. However, the CIA strongly rejected the Muslim community's proposal, and the Toronto court closed the case as unappealable. The decisions of the CIA and the Toronto court drove Muslims to wreak havoc across Canada. In every city, they organized demonstrations and demanded that Mother Irshad's children be handed over to Muslim families to be raised as Muslims. In those demonstrations, some of them openly called for the destruction of America and Israel. Despite this, their demonstrations did not receive any attention from Canada and America. The social service invited Christian families interested in adopting Irshad's children to submit their applications. The invitation is not limited to Toronto, but has included applicants from all over Canada. In a fleeting period, all 6 children were adopted into Christian homes. Some Muslim women in Toronto somehow managed to contact the 2 eldest daughters of the detained Muslim mother, Khadija and Salama, and poisoned their minds. They told them that their detained Muslim mother wanted them to grow up as Muslims and not as impure Christian infidels, but the social workers conspired with the CIA and changed the decision of their unjustly arrested innocent Muslim mother. Believing this information to be true, the 2 daughters became very stubborn and fought with the Canadian police when they were transferred to foster homes. Despite their fighting and protesting, Irshad's 2 daughters are separated and adopted into 2 different Christian families. The social workers who dealt with the issue of adoption advised these Christian adoptive families not to put any pressure on the 3 girls if they decided to remain Muslim, nor to force their brothers to accept a religion they did not want to follow. Meanwhile, the suspected terrorist, Irshad Al-Shamari, was held for 6 months in the notorious Gitmo Detention Center without questioning. When she newly arrived at the detention, she was shown the charges against her. There are no clear specific accusations against her except that she lived among Taliban fighters and al-Qaeda terrorists for a long time and married one of the terrorists who carried out the cowardly attacks on New York on September 11, 2001. The other charges relate to immigration to Canada under a false name and a false claim that she is an American, and the CIA believes this lie facilitated her entry into Canada. But the most serious charge leveled against her was the CIA's assumption that the white Muslim woman, Irshad Al-Shamari, was fully aware of her husband's plot to carry out those terrorist attacks on America and kept quiet. This accusation was linked to another serious accusation that the Australian woman had known for 5 years about the anti-Western activities of the Afghan Taliban and the Arab Mujahideen of al-Qaeda and continued to live among them. However, the accused Muslim woman decided to accept all these charges and cooperate with U.S. investigators and lawyers. 6 months later, the female suspect Muslim woman Irshad Al-Shamari was assigned an attorney by the U.S. government. One day, 2 male and 3 female guards came to her cell and told her that her lawyer was willing to speak with her. Then they took her to a place where her lawyer was waiting to meet her. The lawyer read the charges against her again and asked her to tell him her response to those serious charges. The accused Muslim, Irshad Al-Shamari, accepted all the charges except for these 2 serious charges, due to her full knowledge of the conspiracy against America in which her husband participated, and the other charge that she lived for a long time with the Mujahideen who were trained to kill Westerners, especially Americans. She told her lawyer that she was detained in those Afghan camps of the Muslim Mujahideen in Kandahar city against her will, and when her husband killed himself by suicide in the cowardly terrorist attacks in America on September 11th. The leaders of the Afghan Mujahideen did not allow her to take her 6 children and travel outside Afghanistan. Likewise, her Muslim husband, before his alleged martyrdom in America, sent a message ordering the Afghan leaders not to allow his Australian wife to take one of his 7 children out of Afghanistan or to take them to any infidel country in the West, even her motherland Australia. For the sake of the future of her 7 innocent children, she remained imprisoned against her will in the city of Kandahar until the NATO forces invaded Afghanistan and liberated it from the Mujahideen. The detained Australian Muslim woman was also interrogated shortly after she met her U.S. lawyer. The American investigators interrogated her about her relationship with al-Qaeda and Taliban terrorists. They asked her to tell them about the Mujahideen's activities in the camps. Finally, they demanded her knowledge of her husband's terrorist activities and his involvement in the September 11, 2001, attacks on New York and other places in America. The investigators even wanted to know what her husband was doing while he was in Saudi Arabia. The Muslim defendant, Irshad al-Shamari, honestly told her interrogators what she knew about the terrorists she had lived with for 5 years. She did not hide or lie about anything she saw or knew about those barbarians. The investigators were astonished by her openness and honesty. So, they felt that they did not need to interrogate her in a harsh way by waterboarding, as they always used to do with the rest of the terrorist Muslim Mujahideen detained with her in the notorious Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. When they asked her why she kept living with people she knew were trained and incited to kill innocent people, she responded by saying, "I was held in those infernal camps against my will, and when I was released and allowed to leave those camps, I was not allowed to take my 7 children and traveling to my country, and that's why I sacrificed my freedom for the sake of my children." After that, the life of the Muslim defendant, Irshad al-Shamari, in the notorious prison for terrorists, became a daily routine after she met with her American lawyer and was questioned by her interrogators. She spent most of her time in a small cell, locked up as if she were a monkey in a cage in a zoo. She read her Holy Bible and the 4 Gospels of Jesus daily and stopped reading the Quran. She even abandoned the obligatory 5 daily prayers in Islam. In short, the repentant Muslim woman turned her back on Muhammad and gave her life to Christ. She felt extraordinary joy and peace of mind whenever she read her Holy Bible and prayed to her Lord Jesus Christ. She felt the peace, serenity, and psychological comfort that she feels now in her cell in the notorious Gitmo Detention Center 1,000,000 times better than the suffering, persecution, violence, and abuse she went through in Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan. She no longer feared what would happen to her in the future. When the accused female Muslim terrorist Irshad came to, she was not allowed to mingle with male terrorist Mujahideen for fear of being sexually assaulted and raped as punishment. The detention's authority expected that the detained Muslim men would consider her to be a white, infidel foreign spy disguised as a Muslim, so she was planted among them to spy on them, take secret information from them, and pass it on to the infidel Americans. Despite these concerns, after being interrogated, she was given permission to mingle with other male terrorist prisoners during Friday prayers at the mosque. The detention authority allowed Muslim prisoners to use the only church inside Gitmo to perform the mandatory weekly Friday prayers for Muslims. Her presence in the mosque from day one created a severe problem for the other Muslim male detainees. All the Muslims being held are men, except for Irshad, who is the only Muslim woman. Therefore, she was told from the beginning that all the Muslim prisoners in the prison are males except for her. When the white woman Irshad on Friday came to the mosque, the terrorist Muslim captives protested the presence of a female in the place of worship. These detained Arab, Asian, and African men believe that the presence of a woman inside the mosque invalidates their prayers and introduces Satan into their midst. To justify their objection, they quoted the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, in which he said, "The dog, the donkey, and the woman invalidate a man's prayer whenever they pass in front of him," cutting off between the worshipper and the Qibla. Also, the Prophet Muhammad said, "A woman is Aura. When she gets out of the house, the devil takes charge of her." The apostle also said, "When a woman comes, she comes in the form of Satan, and when she goes, she retreats in the form of the devil." Accordingly, The white Australian woman, Irshad, stopped going to Friday prayers and spent most of her free time in her cell. Within her first 6 months in the Gitmo, the lone Muslim female prisoner developed a sort of secret friendship with one of her male guards. The same white American guard who brought her a copy of the Gideon Bible showed great affection towards her. In the beginning, his affection was considered a kind of pity that stems from the heart of a good Christian man who loves to help all people, even his enemies who hate him. She begins to feel the same affection for him. Gradually, this affection developed into a strong emotional attachment and deep love. The white woman felt that the white guard had been sent by God to take her to the Lord. One day, the guard surprised her by inviting her to attend Sunday Mass at the church. Although she had accepted the Lord, Irshad did not think to officially announce her conversion. She is afraid of being accused by the detention authority of pretense or hypocrisy. But when the kind Christian guard invited her to attend Sunday Mass in the prison's only church, she could not refuse. But he's American, and he knows she's Australian, and he is a white man like her. When she asked him about his name, he told her that the detention authority was preventing him from disclosing his name and address to preserve his safety from retaliation by prisoners and fellow Muslim terrorists outside Guantanamo Bay. The suspected terrorist, Irshad, thanked him and promised to come to the church. Typically, most of the people who join every Sunday service are American guards, staff, and other workers at the place of detention. Most of them are Black and white American Marines. No other Muslim prisoner had ever come to church on Sunday, apart from the only Muslim female detainee, Irshad Alshamari. Therefore, her presence in the church amazed all worshippers, even the American priest. The priest is a Black man of African-American descent among those Americans whom the Arabs call nigger slaves. On that Sunday, when the white prisoner attended the church service and listened to the sermon, she felt strongly that she had been liberated from the heavy burden she had carried within her heart for so long. That day, Irshad knew for sure that the persecuted and mistreated Muslim girl for many years, Irshad Alshamari, was dead and gone forever, and that the innocent Christian girl, Susan Peterson, had been reborn. Irshad's life has undergone tremendous changes since her first spiritual experience in the church. That same Sunday, she printed her name in her Holy Bible as Susan Peterson. When she returned to her cell, she tore the copy of the Quran that she considered only inspired by the devil to shreds and threw those satanic papers into her wastebasket. If she had a cigarette lighter or a box of matches, she would have burned it and then urinated on it. She felt freed from that mental and spiritual bondage that had haunted and enslaved her soul and body like a horrible demon for more than a decade.